Okay, guys, so the first thing we're going to do is go through the quiz that is today. So going through source one, sorry, I don't have a document camera attached to my home computer, and we can't do live Zoom, which means I can't do Zooms from my classroom because I'm recording this the night before, which means I'm recording this Sunday, May 9th from my home. So source one says growing cotton. While easier to grow and store cotton than it is food crops, cotton seeds were hard to separate from the soft fiber. Forced to do the job by hand, each worker could pick the seeds from no more than about 1 pound of cotton per day. Separating these cotton fibers from its seeds was a labor-intensive and unprofitable venture. Only the largest plantations found raising cotton cost-effective. So if you go to the question in your item set that goes with this source, question number one says, based in source one, why was it difficult for cotton farmers to make a profit from growing cotton? Okay, so first thing we're doing is going through the answers on this one. Okay, so number one's choices include A, cotton took a long time to grow. That's not in the item set. That's not in your source one. It doesn't say that. B, the climate in the United States was not suitable for growing large amounts of cotton. That also is not mentioned in your source. C, picking cotton requires a lot of labor and time. It does mention that. D, cotton seeds could be easily removed from its fibers. That is specifically contraindicated in what your source says. So your best answer for number one is C. Okay, let's go to source two. Growth of cotton production. So this is a table, okay, and it starts with 1790, and you see three figures of men and a partial fourth figure, and then you see part of one hay bale. It's not supposed to be a hay bale, it's supposed to be a cotton bale, and it shows at the top a full, what's supposed to be 3 cotton bales. It's supposed to represent 200,000 bales of cotton produced. So it's showing the fact that you only have a partial bale down there at the bottom means that 4,000 bales of cotton were produced in 1790, and there were 697,897 enslaved people in the United States in 1790. In other words, just over 500,000 enslaved persons in the United States in 1790. You go to the next little part of the graphic, and it says in 1820, there were 73,222 cotton bales produced in the United States, and there were 1,538,098 enslaved persons in the United States. So in between those two pieces of the graphic, it says 1794, the cotton gin was invented. So why such a big jump in cotton production, and why such a big jump in enslaved persons? Because that is 3 times as many enslaved persons, and that is growth from 4,000 to 73,000 bales of cotton being produced. The reasoning is cotton gin was invented. You go over one more column in the table, and it says 1.3 million bales of cotton were produced. So from 1790 to 1840, that's 50 years. You go from 4,000 bales of cotton being produced to 1.3 million bales of cotton. That is tremendous growth in the number of bales of cotton being produced. And you go from just over 500,000 enslaved persons in the United States to 2.5 million enslaved persons in the United States. That is absolutely insane growth in the number of enslaved persons in the country. You go to 1860, and that is 70 years after the first column in this table, and you have 3.8 million bales of cotton being produced. So between those 70 years, you go from 4,000 bales of cotton to nearly 4 million bales of cotton. That is a huge difference in the amount of cotton being produced. And you go from just over 500,000 enslaved persons in the United States to 4 million enslaved persons in the United States. So clearly, the invention of the cotton gin and the predominance of the cotton gin throughout the United States had a large role in the explosion of cotton production and in the explosion of enslavement of people in the United States. The graphic at the bottom says, or the words at the bottom of the caption says, by 1860, cotton production accounted for 58% of all United States exports. In other words, 2/3 of all products being shipped outside of the United States for profit to other countries was cotton. And cotton was valued at $2.5 million in 1860. That's a lot of money for 1860. I mean, thinking that bread might be worth less than 5 cents a loaf compared to what we pay now for it. $2.5 million is worth a lot of money then. Okay, so let's go to our question that deals with source 2. Question number 2 says, using source 2, identify 2 types of resources that were used in the production of cotton. Select 2 that apply. A, human resources, slave labor. Absolutely. We saw that enslaved persons, the number of enslaved persons shot way up with the predominance of cotton production going up too. So A is definitely one of your choices. It says B, capital resources, large sums of money. That is not put on that table. C, natural resources, water pumps, also not found in that table. D, natural resources, large areas of fertile land. Do you think they needed land to grow all that cotton? I'm thinking they do. So your other choice is going to be D. Your 2 answers for number 2 are going to be A and D. Slave labor and large areas of fertile land. Number 3 is asking about source 3. So let's go to source 3. In source 3, you see a big long boat stacked with bales of cotton. Those are tremendously huge bales of cotton. And I'm counting the layers of cotton bales. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and in some places 10 bales high. I certainly hope those bales of cotton don't shift. And then people are standing on top of 10 bales of cotton high. And that boat is sitting in the Mississippi River in Baton Rouge, Louisiana in 1904. So that's after the abolition of slavery. Okay, so this, if you look, we can't tell the skin tone of the people on that boat, but it could be the fact that it's shadowy. People, they do look dark in the picture, but again, it could be the high shadows on that boat. Can't even see the name of that boat. Oh, there it is. It says aboard the steamship William Garrig on the Mississippi River near Baton Rouge. So we can see the boat. The water doesn't look real clean, but then again, I'm sure it's stirring up a lot of mud with a boat that heavy with cotton. So looking at question 3, how did the invention of the steamboat impact the cotton industry during the 1800s as seen in source 3? A, it allowed more people to travel west and start cotton farms. B, it increased the amount and speed in which cotton could be exported. C, cotton no longer had to be transported long distances to get to markets in the North and Europe. Or D, it increased the number of slaves needed to ship cotton bales. So the picture, 1904, this is after slavery's been banned. Okay, so D, thankfully, is not even on the table. It did increase the amount that cotton could be exported, and it increased the speed that cotton could be exported. So it's B as in boy. Okay. Number 4 question on the back says based on source 4. Or source 4. That is a postcard, a picture from postcard of cotton compress, which is a machine that squished down the cotton, with bales of cotton ready for shipping in Taylor, Texas, not Tyler, but Taylor, Texas. Railroad cars are stationed between the loading docks. So you can see the railroad cars, if you look carefully, in the exact center of that picture. Okay. By 1920, cotton was still king in Texas. As railroads extended their reach in the late 1800s across the state, so did their influence. Farmers began to move their cotton compresses, which still baled, which means it pushed together 500-pound bales of cotton from seaports to the side of railway tracks. No longer did farmers have to move their bales of cotton from their farms to the closest port, such as New Orleans or in Baton Rouge. They could easily move large quantities of cotton to the northern markets right from their farms or closest railway station. So the number 4 question says, based on source 4, what was the main impact railroads had on cotton production in Texas? A, larger loads of cotton could be transported to northern markets. B, cotton could be shipped at a faster pace. C, shipping cotton to Europe became cheaper. Or D, there was no longer a need to ship cotton to seaports. So this was asked about the main impact. So the main impact was there was no longer a need to ship cotton to seaports. D. Number 5. Based on all the sources, describe 2 ways new technologies like the cotton gin, the steamboat, and the railroad impacted the United States economy. Okay, so the cotton gin allowed cotton to be processed faster. Okay, and processing cotton faster allowed cotton to become a leader in the U.S. economy and become a $2.5 million industry. Okay, that's one way. The steamboat allowed farmers to move their products from a river town to many other places up north, and they wouldn't have to transport it necessarily from one road to another, but the steamboat moved things very cheaply and relatively quickly compared to having to transport things by horses and such. The railroad allowed things to move even quicker. No longer would farmers have to take things to the nearest seaport, such as New Orleans or Baton Rouge or Vicksburg. They could take it, say, to a railroad station in Shreveport. So they wouldn't have to go down to Baton Rouge. So that saves a farmer a lot of money if that farmer's in Shreveport, because there are old railway stations still in existence today that we can find from cotton transportation days from the late 1800s. There's one along Florida Locust Road. It's from the 1800s, where farmers could transport their goods, their cotton, or any other thing they want to transport, such as tobacco. They could transport to the nearest railroad station, which might be very small, and not having to transport their goods so far saved the farmers a lot of money. And saving the money for the farmers for transportation allowed them to make more money on whatever good that they're selling. So that affected the economy too. Okay, so that's 3 ways that new technology has affected the economy. All right, going to question 7. Based on the map, you see that I printed everybody's maps in color ink. You're welcome. That's my printer for you. What was a major barrier for settlers migrating west? So we've talked earlier about first European settlers settling along the eastern coast, that being Maine, Vermont, Virginia, Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, New York, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, all that. Okay, so that first barrier you come to is the Appalachian Mountains. B. Whoop. Wow, my answer key had that wrong. Oh, no, it didn't. These are my answer key has the wrong numbers. So on your questions, it's going to say, for this one, it says number 7. There is no number 6. Okay. So the way this test runs, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. There is no number 6. All right, guys. It's weird. I didn't do it. Number 8, based on the table, which form of transportation was the cheapest way to ship goods across the country in the mid-1800s? So you go to that table right above that question. Roads. It says it costs 15 cents per ton per mile. You go to the one below it. It says canals. Well, that's not a picture of a canal there. That's a picture of a steamboat. Okay? 1.1 cents per ton per mile. So which one's cheaper, 15 cents or 1.1 cent? I don't know about you, but my math says 1.1 cents is cheaper. Railroads. Okay? That's a train on it. All right? It's not a picture of a railroad, but a train. 3.4 cents per ton per mile. So the cheapest out of those, 15, 1.1, or 3.4 is 1.1, and that would be the boat. So C, number 8 is C, steamboats. Turn your page. Number 9, what impact did the Erie Canal, which is pictured in light gray, going east to west on that map, have on Western migration? A, increase the population of immigrants in New York City? No. B, decrease the amount of goods shipped from Western farmland? No, actually increased. So it's opposite of that. C, decrease the speed in which goods could be shipped across the Appalachian Mountains? No, it's the opposite of that. Increase the speed. So it's not C. D, increased access to the fertile lands beyond the Appalachian Mountains? Yes, D. 9 is D. Number 10. Again, map is in, or the graph is in color. You're welcome. Again, it's my printer. Based on the graphs, what impact did the cotton gin have on the American economy? So the first graph, 1800 to 1860, cotton production. We see 1800, that is just after the cotton gin is introduced. There's not much cotton being produced. By 1860, cotton gin has been out for about 60 or 70 years, and there's a lot of cotton being produced. Look over at the other graph, okay? Growth of slavery. 1800, there's just over 500,000 enslaved persons in the United States. By 1860, there's about 23,000 slaves in the United States. In other words, 2.3 million enslaved persons in the United States. So looking at your choices. Based on the graphs, what impact did the cotton gin have on the American economy? A, more Americans wanted to move west to find lands to produce cotton. Yes, not in the graphs. B, slavery increased with the growth of cotton production. That looks pretty likely. C, increased access to fertile farmlands in the West. Again, that's not what's in the graphs. D, cotton production became more profitable. Yeah, I'm not seeing anything about money in those graphs. I am seeing something about cotton production shooting up and enslaved persons numbers growing. So B as in boy is a correct answer. Number 11, what impact did the Transcontinental Railroad, transcontinental just means it goes cross country. What impact did the Transcontinental Railroad have on the economy of the West during the mid-1800s? A, increased settlement and growth in the region. B, increased the time needed to ship products to other regions. No, it decreased the time. C, increased the cost of shipping products to other regions. No, it decreased the cost compared to road. And D, increased the amount of land needed to grow cotton. No, absolutely not. It is A. It increased settlement and growth in the region. A. Okay. So that is your review for the quiz. Okay. And let us go to transportation and movement. All right. So your assignment, the first one was the review for the quiz. Okay. Now I'm going to go through the assignment you have, and then I'll turn you loose where you can do both things. I would suggest you do the quiz first while the quiz answers are fresh on your mind, and then go back and write the paragraph after I give you the directions for it and go through the text sources for it. So here's the prompt for the paragraph. Explain how the railroad, is talking about the Transcontinental Railroad, and the National Road removed the barrier of the Appalachian Mountains in migrating to the west. So it's a paragraph. You need to write a good topic sentence. Remember, your topic sentence just rearranges this prompt into a complete sentence. Then 3 complete detailed sentences, and then a concluding sentence. That's worth 10 points. Okay. Now I'm going to read to you this text. Okay. The Appalachian Mountains. Historically, the Appalachian Mountains proved to be a major impediment, which means a thing that made crossing them difficult. Proved to be a major impediment to westward settlement and development. Crossing the mountains is relatively easy today in cars, trains, and airplanes. It was very difficult during the 1700s and the early 1800s when people traveled by foot, wagon, or on horseback. Most of the farmers who had farms west of the Appalachian Mountains sent their extra crops to the East Coast via the Ohio River, the Mississippi River, and then through the Gulf of Mexico and around Florida on ocean-going vessels. While this water route was much longer in distance, the travel time was much shorter, and the cost was much less expensive than traveling in wagons over the Appalachian Mountains. The National Road. The first paved or gravel thoroughfare to cross the Appalachian Mountains was the National Road, which reached Ohio in 1825. So that was 40 years before the Civil War. Cutting an approximate 820-mile-long path through the states of Illinois, Indiana, Maryland, Ohio, Pennsylvania, West Virginia. It was built between 1811 and 1834, so it took 23 years to build, and was the first federally funded road in U.S. history. The road unified the West and East and enabled people traveling on horse and buggy or by stagecoach to travel across the Appalachian Mountains on a quicker and safer route. Due to the National Road, many people started traveling westward into the Northwest Territories of Ohio, Michigan, Indiana, Illinois, and Wisconsin. The Erie Canal. The Erie Canal opened in 1825 and a 363-mile canal that connected the Great Lakes with the Atlantic Ocean via the Hudson River. The Erie Canal opened up the country to the resources that lay beyond the Appalachian Mountains. Throughout the 18th and 19th centuries, it took weeks to reach these resources over land. Bulk transportation of goods was limited by what teams of oxen could pull by wagon. The Erie Canal allowed steamboats to cross the Appalachian Mountains. The canal increased the speed in which goods and people could be moved. It also increased the amount of goods that could be transported. What used to take months to cross the Appalachian Mountains now took weeks. Railroads. With the invention of the steam locomotive, travel across the Appalachian Mountains improved dramatically. Railroads allowed travelers to travel across the mountains in a much shorter time. Travel that took months or weeks to travel now took days. The railroad allowed travelers and goods to travel in all directions across the mountains. By 1910, the rail network reached into nearly every county by either a main or branch line. Settlers now had access to new natural resources, and they had the ability to move them all over the country. So for your paragraph, I would suggest you write your topic sentence, and then maybe you could write one sentence about the National Road, one sentence about the Erie Canal, and one sentence about railroads. Do not take a sentence directly from each one of these passages. Make the sentence your own. Okay, guys? And then give me a concluding sentence. All right. Then take your quiz. There are two different assignments. Your quiz is worth 12 points. This paragraph's worth 10. Okay. So that is your work for today.